Alright, is he ready to be sent in? He's ready. Beta levels are normal.
Who are you people?
We are the secret society of cynics.
Spreading over 20 seasons, introducing South Park, the dark comedy written by Trey Parker and Matt Stone is completely useless. The adventure of Kyle, Stan, Kenny, and Cartman are as iconic as their character design, all elements that manage to put South Park atop of its category. But almost 25 years have passed since the first episode, 25 years in which the series has changed, evolve for the better and for the worst. Ladies and gentlemen, greetings and welcome to Screen Scene, the show where we review pop culture. I'm Alex from Zelrix and today we'll be watching South Park. Before we begin the review, it is important that you understand how special South Park is to me personally. When I was a kid, being Canadian, I was mainly watching Teletoon, a network that was specialized in cartoon, that led me to develop a passion for animation. Yes, I was that kid who was not watching that many sitcoms or live action shows and was sticking to animation as I thought live action shows they were for grown-ups. But it doesn't mean that cartoons are not meant to be enjoyed by adults, because at 9 p.m. every single day, Teletoon was turning into Teletoon Detour, the adult version of the network. A bit like Adult Swim does with Cartoon Network. 5 nights a week, it would open with what I like to call the Groaning Hour, an episode of The Simpsons followed by an episode of Futurama. After that, there was an episode of Family Guy and an episode of American Dad replaced it when Peter Griffin was unfortunately taken off the air. In the meantime, the show Tripping the Rift took the spotlight. A show that ran for years and had many viewers despite the fact that there are not that many episodes. Following the Canadian network age restriction, The Simpsons were rated 8+ and Futurama 13+. Family Guy and American Dad were going back and forth between 13 and 16+, and Tripping the Rift, originally a 16+ show, was later on judged too sexual and was rated 18+. You'll guessed it, the goal of the network was probably to go crescendo in their rating, starting the night with an 8+ show like The Simpsons and finishing it with shows like American Dad and Tripping the Rift, which were highly sexual, violent, and full of curse words. It was mostly to avoid parental complaint if you ask me. Only problem is my parents didn't care at all about my innocence or education, which is why I was allowed to watch all these wonderful shows.
Oh, so that's why you're so unbearable.
Yeah, hey! No, more seriously, as a kid I had very strong insomnia problem that I'm still dealing with to this day. It had for upside that on weekend I was allowed to stay up and watch TV as long as I wanted. Anyway, I was calm, my school schedule was already messy and closely monitored, and no matter what, the morning after I was up at 7:30 to watch Chaotic and Ben 10. You might think this is mediocre parenting, but in retrospect this is probably the best way the problem could have been dealt with. Why am I telling you all that? It's because at some point, Teletoon Detour had to take a re-rating of their entire system. That's how Tripping the Rift came from a 16+ to an 18+ show. The restrictions were way more severe, and we're talking about a network that considers Naruto's uncensored version as an 18+ show. In retrospect, these shows were probably considered too low rated, especially Tripping the Rift, because it contains the character of 6. So the question is, if Tripping the Rift used to be rated 16+, can you imagine what a show rated 18+ even prior to the re-rating was like? You'll guessed it, this is also how I discovered South Park. To be honest, at first I hated it. It grew on me, but originally I was like that little 10 years old who was used to shows like The Simpsons, Family Guy, you know, the universe of Seth MacFarlane and Matt Groening. And then there is South Park, which already in the early 2000s, the animation seemed basic and plain. I just didn't get the whole second degree part. In fact, the only real trait that kept me semi-interested in South Park was obviously...
Hey, don't call me fat, you f***ing Jew! F***ing fat ass!
Kyle!
Why the f*** not?
Eric!
Dude, you just said f*** again!
Stanley! Kenny!
What's the big deal? It doesn't hurt anybody.
Yes, For my little child mind, seeing how gruesome and vulgar network TV could be, that was hilarious! Don't lie, you were the same. But clearly, being that age, I was repeating everything I was hearing on TV, so when my mom realized where I took that language from, she didn't care. I mean, yeah, she did. She took the time, she sat with me, and she explained to me why some words were not to be said because they could be hurtful. She took that as a learning opportunity. And to this day, I thank you, Mom. That said, my daddy, he was pissed. I was grounded multiple times because my little brother used to watch shows like South Park or Tripping the Riff because, in his opinion, I was responsible to control his TV schedule. If you didn't get that, I'm a child of divorce.
That explains your crippling need for attention.
Among other things, yep. But a few years later, around the age of 14 or 15 years old, I really got back into South Park. This is where my passion for cinema drove me to take movie director as a possible career choice. And I had developed a critical sense, so I was finally able to enjoy South Park for what it was, a clever satire of the real world. I rethought about all the episodes I saw as a kid and was really disappointed I wasn't able to see the potential behind them. And that's how I became an instant fan of South Park.
I thought it was supposed to be a review. Why are you telling your life story?
Because you need to understand something. For someone who loves South Park as much as I do, saying that it went bad, it's not an opinion. It's as close as I can get as an objective reflection. So you can understand that witnessing one of my favorite shows going downhill, it was painful. And also that what I'm about to say in this video, I won't enjoy it. So friends, gather with me because today we're witnessing the rise and fall of South Park. The strengths. Just like every show, South Park has undeniable strength, and to understand how hard it fell, we need to understand from how high it started. It has an insanely recognizable iconography. For example, if I put that hat on screen, you instantly know which hat this is. In addition, the simplistic animation allows the showrunner to produce more episodes in a shorter lapse of time. And instead of pulling off a Marvel and doing quantity over quality, they actually use this factor to make sure the references in the show are never dated as they air. The thing about animation, you know, it's difficult to stay relevant because animated episodes, they're written 2 to 3 years before they're airing.
Now there's a President Trump! At least we think there's still a President Trump. You see, the writers are writing this in 2018.
But perhaps the greatest strength of South Park is the ability to depict our own world in their own satirized version. Satirized, the little goat guy from Hercules. The formula of South Park is easy to break down and, in my opinion, reside in two main formulas. First of all, you take a situation with a generality and apply this generality in 100% of the cases. For example, one of my favorite episodes, there is The Losing Edge, a parody of Rocky and the Karate Kid. The situation here is that sometimes parents at baseball game act like children and get into fights. Something that Randy, arguably the best character, will do at each and every game only to finally get to face his arch nemesis, the Bat Dad. And if I had to make a list of South Park episodes you should see, it would be on it. The second formula, my favorite one, is the art to take a metaphorical statement and turn it literally. Like in that episode where Kyle and Cartman discovered that the remedy to HIV is money. It is true in the sense that the cure to any illness is money, because if you give money to science, they will be able to develop medicine, vaccine, etc. But please, don't go inject yourself $1,000. You will just make yourself even sicker. Can the human body even withstand 1,000 shredded dollar bills putting directly into their veins? Above that, South Park managed to elevate itself above other cartoons thanks to its main characters who are iconic with a capital I. You have to understand that in the world of animated sitcom, there is one name that thrives above the other, especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, and this name is Homer Simpson. The Simpsons were originally meant to be a portrayal of the average American family. Homer is the everyman, Bart the troubled child, Lisa the smart kid, Marge the mother, Maggie the baby, and Abraham that mildly racist grandpa you love anyway. Formula heavily emulated by shows like American Dad, Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, Bob's Burger, King of the Hills, and so on. But South Park had way deeper writing when it comes to the main character. They were actual people. not just archetypes. Cartman is a caricature of a king child, but he evolves toward being an emperor of evil. Stan is every American kid, but he is also a representation of social awkwardness and a faithful portrayal of this desire to fit in, shown explicitly in episodes like Elementary School Musical or Asperger. In addition to that, we cannot say Stan is a bad person, but let's be honest, you can't say he's a good person either.
Hey everyone, Future as Elrix here. I just noticed while editing this that I'm talking about an episode that is about mental health, and I'm not saying that when you are depressed and suffer from severe or mild trauma or anything related to this topic, you are a bad person. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this episode treats the problem in the way that Stan doesn't do his part of the journey to get better, and that in the other end, his friends like Kyle don't want to meet him halfway through. So that's a very deep episode that deserves an entire video all to itself. If you are interested, be sure to let me know in the comment section, and also remember to subscribe and activate the bell. That's still the best way to tell me that my work interests you. There you go, let's go back to some more funny stuff.
He's right in the middle and pretty influenceable, probably the most accurate portrayal of childhood in the entire show. Kenny only revolves for the first few seasons as the running gag of him always dying, but later on he becomes the heart of the gang and that good friend with no boundaries we all need. Yes, we can see it, Kenny is Charles' boy. And finally there's Kyle. As we all know, he's Jewish. But he's also the smart kid with a certain understanding towards the world that surrounds him. He has a gigantic heart and he is the voice of reason. It's more in the early season, but there was this little habit of the showrunner to just make Kyle appear at the end of an episode and he's like, oh, I learned something today, that was bad, so I won't do that again. Like many shows do, but Kyle mainly did it as a parody of these shows. But the lesson learned was still very valuable and applicable in many situations. I tend to say that Kyle and Cartman are the driving force of the show, the perfect counterpart to each other, the yin to each other's yang, and that most of the greatest episodes are episodes about their rivalry. Even though we all know Cartman is probably in love with Kyle, but let's not theorize. For the supporting cast, we have the unofficial fifth member of the gang, Butters Stutch. The representation of innocence, and it's so hilarious when he's totally clueless about what's going on.
Hey everyone, Future as Elrix here. Normally I would have played a best of Butters being totally clueless, but there is nothing funny that I can think of that YouTube wouldn't strike down. That's a real problem right now. So the best way to fight this injustice is just for you to subscribe to this channel and to follow me on my social media. That's the best way to support creators, especially little creators like me or others with less than 2,000 or even 10,000 subscribers. There you go. Sorry about the inconvenience.
There's also Tweak, the coffee addict, which is very funny.
Oh, and you know something about coffee addiction.
Hey, I only had like 3, 5, 17 coffee today. I stopped counting after 10. And there are also other side characters who often become what they need to be to feed the plot, such as Clyde or Craig. On the side of the adults, Sheila and Geralt, Cal's parents, are hilarious, so is Cartman's mom, but by far the best and probably my favorite character is Randy Marsh. Randy is such a good side character, the art of taking the power and rights of an adult and putting them into the hand of a 6-year-old. I already mentioned his journey in the episode The Losing Hedge, but there are countless other episodes where he's just pure comedic gold.
What is Minecraft and how do you tame a horse in it?
You guys don't need to be watching that stuff.
Oh, come on, you can't block your parents from watching informative murder porn. Stay at your post! No! No! Everybody really liked him!
Well, I know it, but I don't think I should say it. What seems to be the officer problem?
And it is with interesting writing, a great cast, a great side cast, good storylines, and a good sense of actuality among others that South Park managed to elevate itself atop of the mountain of animated adult show. But then one of my favorite episodes happened. You're Getting Old and its follow-up Asperger are a double episode where Stan celebrates his 10th birthday. After that, Stan sees everything as pure shit. Movies are shit, music is shit, and when people are talking to him, he hears shit. And You're Getting Old, the first of the two episodes, ends on a dialogue between Randy and Sharon. A dialogue where they expose the fact that they are unhappy with each other, with the fact that they're just repeating the same pattern over and over, week after week.
People get older, Randy. People grow apart.
They separate and file for divorce. It's obvious that this dialogue is meant to represent the writers of the show stuck with the idea of an animated show that they just don't like anymore. They need change. Asperger, the second episode, diagnoses Stan with the syndrome of Asperger, but we learn that Stan actually belongs to a club of people who see the world as it is.
Drink this.
A club full of alcoholics. Yes, Stan enters denial. The episode ends on Stan realizing that yes, sometimes things change and that his parents probably won't go back together. But that it's also a good thing, a new era is coming up for him. Stan eventually accepts the change. Until... So here, those little bastards of Trey Parker and Matt Stones are telling us, the viewer, that South Park will not change or evolve as they still enjoy what they are doing with it. And that this whole pile of big emotion, it was nothing more than a lie. A change in formula. You see, there are two types of TV show, serialized and episodic. Serial shows are meant to be watched in order, where if you miss an episode, you will not be able to follow the next one. It's the case for The Walking Dead, Naruto, and The Flash, for example. Meanwhile, episodics are composed of episodes that have a clear start and end and are made to be enjoyed individually, such as Gravity Falls, Rick and Morty, and obviously South Park.
Not episodic, we often see episodes referring to each other.
Yes, that's true, and that's also why I believe episodic show to be better than serialized TV, for the sole reasons that it opens the door to do both. Whereas with serialized TV, if you try to do more episodic stuff, you are cursed with the filler appellation. You see, shows like Avatar: The Last Airbender are technically episodic, but they have what we call a red wire, an overarching plot that can, if needed, be developed through the seasons. This allows the writer to install a sense of progression, like for example Aang when he learns a new bending move. Also, we have what we call the impact factor or shock value. When an episodic show does have an overarching story and said overarching story is developed, it's the occasion for the writer to do a great double, triple episode, or even a good season finale. If this plot only shows up for one episode on a random airing date, it's a guarantee for this episode to, if not being enjoyed, being at least remembered. As for serialized TV, if there is something important in each and every episode, I tend to get lost. Each revelation just feels like any other one. Case in point, let's take the word plot and change it by death. At the end of the first season of Game of Thrones, Ned Stark loses his head. This is an impressive shock value as Ned was thought to be the main character of the show. And everyone was like, oh my god, they killed the main character, I can't wait to see the next episode. And seasons later, even though the show still has developed an impressive fan base, seeing a main character dies, it became ordinary. Why? Because it was happening every other episode. And the same goes for Revelation. If you reveal something interesting at each episode, it will become less and less interesting as the seasons goes on. Just take for example Ben 10 Alien Force and its two-part season finale of the second season, where I think we can all agree was impressive, because the hybrid invasion was teased to us for the past 2 seasons, but it was teased in the background. On the foreground, we had episodic plot with the main trio solving alien crimes. And this is the proof that episodic show can do what serialized show do, but that serialized show cannot or difficultly can do what episodic show can do.
That sentence made no sense whatsoever.
Who are you, my English teacher? This is why episodic shows often have an overarching plot, but it doesn't mean that they always have it. And for the longest time, it was the case for South Park. It was an episodic show without an overarching plot. Or when there was an overarching plot, it was a season finale or a double or even triple episode. We think obviously of Cartoon Wars or Imagination Land, the Coon trilogy. But these overarching plots were set up in the first episode of the saga, and they were developed without a break until the end of the saga, like 1 or 2 episodes later. The rest of the season was composed of lighter episodes where life goes on and were meant to be enjoyed by themselves. This went on for seasons, until the writer of the show felt that indeed they needed to evolve, they needed to change, and that's how South Park came from an episodic to a serialized show. If you jump at any point in the later seasons, it's very confusing because you don't have the background established for the rest of the season or even sometimes seasons. And this change officially came with season 19. 19 years after the first episode aired. You cannot make that significant of a change after 19 years. Case in point, I'm sure if Homer Simpson was to trade his signature white shirt for a blue shirt, internet would go nuts. And now they are literally switching the format in which a beloved show has worked for almost 20 years. Obviously, some viewers will be turned off. Me first. Don't make me say what I didn't say. The show doesn't belong to the fan. It belongs to Trey Parker and Matt Stone. If that's what they want to do, they're free to do so. Just as if I don't enjoy this new formula, I'm free not to enjoy it. It's a new status quo that is difficult to adapt to. But if only it was the only problem. Actuality. Yes, originally this was one of South Park's greatest strengths, and now it's arguably its biggest weakness. The show took the habit to confuse relevance and actuality. As I said, the show is very simply animated, which allows the writer of the show to write an episode about actuality and air it on the same week or the following week. And sometimes it's great, but some other times, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. For example, right now you can and should definitely subscribe to this channel and activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes up. But for South Park, it creates two problems. First of all, there is the real problem. South Park was always a satire of the real world, but it touched larger subjects such as AIDS, terrorism, or anti-Semitism. Now we have an entire season dedicated to the election between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. An entire season not about a concept or a recurring thing, but about a specific event that lasted roughly a year or two. It was a presidential election, so obviously when it was happening, it was everywhere. On TV, social medias, in the mail, and now in South Park too. So the first problem here is the viewer simply got saturated. Then the second problem, the episode aged poorly. Why? Because they are actual, but they are not relevant. One of the greatest strengths of South Park is the fact that most episodes are really rewatchable. And when was the last time you watched the news from 3 or 4 years ago in a 100% purely entertaining purpose? Never? That's what I thought. Once again, talking about Imagination Land, it takes a problem that is very real and still present, but they're not talking about a specific event. This is what makes the episode still enjoyable 15 years after its first airing. For the Trump election, even though there are younger episodes, they aged poorly for the simple fact that they didn't stay relevant because a good portion of the viewer got over it. They were really relevant when it was happening, but now it's just that happened. The season in itself and even the jokes about Trump, about Clinton, they're not half bad. Even it is pretty well done, but it is done through a medium that is not meant to transmit that kind of message, carried by characters who are written to be something else. Speaking of which, Randy. Yes, we're finally here. What, in my opinion, caused the downfall of South Park? Randy Marsh.
But you said Randy was your favorite and the best character.
No, I said he was my favorite and the best side character. If there is one thing I really enjoy in South Park, it's when the kids actually act like kids, when they are confronted to a world way bigger than it seems, and when they don't understand it because they're 8 years old. On the other side of the spectrum, there are also the adults who often act like adults, which is decently funny, but when they act like kids, that's hilarious. Then there's Randy, but Randy, he's a dirtbag, but not like Cartman, Stan, or Garrison. Eric Cartman is a character totally over the top, capable of mobilizing force that no mere human could do on their own, regardless of their age. Most importantly, Cartman is totally apathetic. Yes, I enjoy him, but mostly I enjoy seeing him suffer whenever life decides that he's been acting like a jackass long enough to take a good slice of humble pie in his stupid little face. And obviously Cartman didn't learn much through the show, because at the end of each episode you could hit the reset button and go back to the original formula. But sometimes in episodes like Go God Go or 200 and 201, Cartman got what he deserved. Randy, we're talking about a man who acts irresponsibly, is disrespectful, put his family and friends in danger, and ruins the life of everyone around him, and never learns anything or is never given what he deserves.
Who shot up the school? Was it you?
No.
Did you get shot?
No.
Oh. Well, what's this about failing a math quiz? When was your last... I mean, you know how sometimes things can seem like a little bigger deal because, you know, you're down there?
How much closer to home can this all hit?
A, I don't have a so technically I wasn't rubbing anything. And B, I didn't want to even perform tonight, but Stanley gave all our money to Canada through a freemium game, so if anyone rubbed their it was him.
Something that is very funny in the first few seasons as we learn to laugh at the absurdity of the situation, but most importantly, these elements are meant to feed the main plot and our main characters. The episode with apologies to Jesse Jackson shows Randy saying the N-word on national TV. And of course his reactions are funny, but the main trait of the episode is the fact that Stan now has to live with the fact that his dad is regarded as an old racist. But later on, when the show becomes serious, we see that the action of Randy have slim to no negative repercussion on him, and that he's even glorified for it. To make a wire with what I said earlier about South Park becoming serialized, the serialized format allows us to see that the action of Randy are indeed worsening through times. There are entire seasons where Sharon is miserable and Stan dives deep into a real depression state because of his dad. Why is it not funny? He was a side character and it was feeding the main plot, so what happened? That's it. That's what is killing South Park. Randy has become the main character. The later season mainly turn around him, but in the writing standpoint, he is still treated as a side character with no real evolution, who is there just to feed the main plot. The writers tend to put him under the spotlight that used to belong to our four main characters. I don't know why. Maybe that because Randy is an adult, it's easier for adults to write about him. But there is also a repercussion on our four actual main characters, where Stan, Kenny, Cartman, and Kyle, they're pretty much fully functional adults in the later seasons. They lost this little childhood innocence of them being like, yo, I'm 8 years old. And once again, there are many ways to write a flawed protagonist, but they at least have to be sympathetic. BoJack Horseman is a terrible person, but don't tell me you don't sympathize a little bit to him.
Hello everyone, Future as Elric. Hey, is it me or we're talking a lot today? So at editing, I realized that I contradict myself. I'm saying that a flawed protagonist needs to be sympathetic, for example like BoJack Horseman, but earlier in the video I say that Cartman is totally apathetic and he's technically a flawed protagonist. So I guess what I'm trying to say is Cartman is apathetic because he is indeed a monster, and characters like Kenny, Stan, and Kyle help counterbalancing this monstrosity, while for Randy, he's just a jerk who never gets what he deserves, something that once again Cartman does. There you go. I hope this is my last intervention.
As for Randy, he's a terrible husband and father, he doesn't take responsibilities for his action, and he's glorified for it. He caused the COVID-19 pandemic! And we're supposed to root for him!
after I got really sick, and this was all back in October.
Jesus Christ, you You started all this!
Before the pandemic, college. You know where I am now? On my basement, making South Park videos. You, Randy. Once again, opposing to Cartman, where he is a terrible human being, he's worse than Randy, but the show never depicts what Cartman does as okay. In the case of Randy, we are following this mess of an adult being who is non-ironically a terrible person, which begs the question, if I don't like the main character and what he is doing to the show I used to enjoy, why should I keep watching? So, to recapitulate, South Park went from an interesting and fresh idea to an empty shell of itself. The change in tone, formula, format, and main characters are, in my opinion, what killed the show, and unfortunately, I don't see it coming back. South Park jumped the shark, like many shows before it and many shows after it. But it's not all bad. We have the original first season before the show got serialized, which are always a delight to watch and rewatch, so if you like them, be sure to tell me in the comment section, because that's a victory in itself. If you like the new formula of South Park, that is something that you have the right to do, and that is also something that you like, that I am jealous of you being able to enjoy it, and that I nor no one can ever take away from you. So if this is your case, be sure to explain it in the comment section. Then remember to subscribe and activate the bell to be notified whenever a new video comes up. Follow me on my social medias, all linked in the description down below. Share this video with as many South Park fans as you can, and as always, thanks for watching.